What's going on, fam? We're back again. Here's the thing. So today we're going to talk about mental health in sports. More in specifics, we're going to say, is there pressure to perform for athletes? Is there pressure from the coaches? Is there pressure from the family? We've got a special guest with us here today. We've got Ashley Smith, who is a licensed therapist. She's out of Carrollton, Texas. Ashley has a BS in psychology. She's got an MS in mental health counseling, and she's currently finishing up her PhD. So in the next couple of months, we'll be referring to her as Dr. Ashley. Ashley's been in private practice since 2018, and her practice is Rejuvenation Counseling, which is located in Carrollton, Texas. So areas of specialty are depression, anxiety, mood disorders, BIPOC and LGBTQ plus communities. So without further ado, we're going to introduce Miss Ashley Smith. Ashley,
Hi,
how you doing?
I am well. How are you?
We're doing great. We're doing great. So Ashley, I got my co-hosts here. We got Carl Jackson and we got Brandon Watts.
Welcome. Pleasure to meet you.
Okay. Real quick, Ashley, tell us what made you get into the mental health field.
That's an interesting question. Well, honestly, when I was in college, I was majoring in history. I wanted to, go on digs in Egypt and such. And my mother told me that I wasn't going to make any money doing that. So I chose psychology. But again, even getting my bachelor's, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And I just took a chance in a master's program at Mississippi College. And once I actually got into the program, I noticed that, hey, I'm actually good at this. And the trauma that I have, encountered, it really, I really understood what was going on, what had happened with me in my childhood and things like that. So it was just something that I had a passion for. And I knew like, hey, this is something I want to do. But it wasn't really until my master's program that I knew like, this is what I truly want to do. This is what I'm good at. At one point, I think I probably wanted to be like a physical therapist because I was an athlete my entire life. And I was an athlete in college. But therapy is just something that really stuck with me. Just being able to help people, especially individuals who look like me, and just kind of knowing the history of healthcare and African Americans and such. So I think that's probably why I chose the field.
Okay. So then, my question, we were talking earlier, the guys and I, about being passionate about, and there's certain careers that we think you have to be passionate about in order to go into them. So I'm guessing that you are passionate about mental health. You're satisfied with, where you're going at this point?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say I'm very passionate about it. I feel like I know what I'm talking about. I'm not a kind of cocky or conceited person, but when it comes to mental health, I'm very passionate about it and I know what I'm talking about. I think it is something, fortunately, that has become more mainstream, but it's been under the radar for so long. And I definitely feel like when you look at mental health, you should look at mental health the same way you look at your physical health. The way we go to the doctor, every 3 months or 6 months or every month or whatever it may be when you're ill, you break your leg. I feel like the mind is the same way and we need to take care of it. And I'm happy that we're finally taking the initiative to start, taking the initiative to finally start going to therapy because it's been on the radar for so long. So I would definitely say it's something I'm very passionate about.
Okay. So in our community, because we have been at such a deficit for so long and we've just recently started recognizing that we do have to look at our mental health in the Black community, have you seen that there is a definite, significant increase in our community seeking out mental health services?
Oh, yes, most definitely. Majority of my population that I work with are African Americans. And I think it's funny because it's not something I actually sought out. It was just when I moved to Texas and I started doing private practice, African American, women, men started seeking me out. And I was like, oh, well, this is a population that's really, really in need. And I already knew this, but one of the biggest things that they say to me all the time is, I want someone who looks like me, who has most likely experienced the same, inequities that I have as a Black individual. And it just, having someone who's a therapist who looks like them, it makes them more comfortable. I saw an increase personally during the pandemic. During the pandemic, a lot of individuals in general, sought counseling, but I saw a lot of Black individuals seeking counseling during the pandemic. And so that's when I really, really saw an uptick. And and when I say pandemic, I mean the pandemic also kind of like during the BLM movement, all of that's kind of mixed in together. It was all together. So that's when I saw an uptick.
I mean, I know we're chomping at the bit to ask some questions, so I'm gonna go ahead, since we are talking about mental health in sports, and then pass it over to Carl. So, Carl, you got a question for Ashley?
Oh, please don't, not
Yes, and I'm gonna jump the gun and call you Dr. Ashley. So,
yet. Not yet. Let's hold on.
We speaking it into
already,
fruition.
right? So, again, welcome. Thank you thanks for coming on and joining us. One of the things that it kind of stuck out to me on your bio when it said that you work with the LGBTQ plus community, and when we're talking about sports, and I'm thinking old school. I played football in high school, and even before that, just playing in the neighborhood and doing certain things. And I know that if somebody called you soft or gay or other derogatory terms that I won't get into right now, that was supposed to motivate you. That was supposed to call you out because you had to defend yourself, so to speak, against that connotation or stereotype. Now, fast forward to 2024, and I'm not going to say the stigma is all gone, but societal changes have been such that that's not necessarily something that's going to motivate you or you have to defend yourself against. But my question would be, how have you dealt with people who have had that type of trauma, whether they are gay or not, who have had that, those childhood experiences, whether it motivated them or it affected them, negatively, and as you carry that into adulthood?
I think like the example that you gave, I don't think I necessarily had clients who struggle with that specifically. I've had, of course, clients who have struggled to come out because of what's behind that. Mm-hmm. But to go back to what you're talking about, as far as like, I guess the term being called gay, like, oh, don't do that. You acting gay, or, let's not be gay out here, guys, and things like mm-hmm. that. I definitely think that it has changed, right. Because of course you can't say that, we have to look at the world and the climate that we're in today. Of course, that's not something you should be saying. This is my personal opinion on this, not a clinical opinion. This part right here, is not something you should be saying anyway to anyone to motivate them. And now it's a little more clear now. The smoke is a little clearer when it comes to being able to come out. People are more comfortable. But even with that, people are still not safe the way they should be being able to come out. And so again, going back to what you asked, trying to find a different motivator to help individuals, to help athletes become the best version of themselves on the field or on the court, because I think that it will affect their mental health. I think it will affect their mental health in how you're talking to them. And I'm guessing you're talking about coaches. I'm pretty sure it was coaches, teammates, those things. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So, or both.
Well, both. I mean, it might start as teammates, but then it works its way into coaches. Typically, and I'll just say this from my experience, from a teammate or a peer, it's not that big a deal. But when it comes from an adult or an authority figure or a coach, then you really kind of take it to heart. And I'll say that was thrown around when, this was the 80s from coaches, that along with some, maybe some physical checks and so forth, back then. And like you said, I know it's not acceptable now. Not to say that it doesn't happen, because I've heard that it still does happen in certain areas, but I just want to, I know that, for me, it didn't have a long-term effect on me, but I know that particularly could have a long-term effect, even if the person was gay or not gay, or if they had a, question in their sexuality or what have you. I know that's not necessarily a motivator, but I didn't know if it was something that people say, somebody told me I was gay and that's why I'm gay, or.
Yeah, no, like I said, I've never personally encountered that per se, but I can hear where you're coming from. Like, I think that could affect mental health regardless if you identify with that or you don't identify, or you're struggling with that. And you have to look at that too. You have to look at what you're saying, because I think coaching is more than just coaching on the field or the court. You have to look at, being a mentor, how am I helping this young man or woman or non-binary individual grow as an individual? So you have to look at that too. Like, what am I saying? How is my tone? What's coming out of my mouth that's helping them or making them regress? And you have to look at that, because the mental health plays a part too. So I definitely agree with that.
And I think too, Carl, when we talk about, the coaches they have coaches now, old school coaches, and they're kind of falling by the wayside. They're dinosaurs because people don't react to that old school style of coaching, So
absolutely.
I think it's probably something that is becoming less prevalent as, what it used to be like. So, Brandon, I'd like to pull you in. Do you got a question for Ashley?
Yeah. Pleasure to meet you. We're glad you're here, Ashley.
Yes.
Took a look at the CV sent to us, of course, and a question I have for you. Mental health is a popular thing nowadays. It's getting the respect it deserves, and it was, like you said, left by the wayside. So, looking at your expertise in anxiety and depression, what, if any, correlation do you see with that in the field of performance of athletes? Are you seeing that they're using this in a positive way because you have the anxiety to perform, or are you seeing a negative effect? And what's your take on those two and their impact on the performance and overall, well-being of athletes?
I can see it being both ways, actually. I can see it, of course, being negative. So, dealing with anxiety and depression. And so you can have this pressure to perform, and say for instance, if you were a basketball player, let's just use that. You were a basketball player and you're in high school, and you were, ranked very high, and in college, again, you're ranked very high, won a championship or whatnot. And however, when you get to the pros, it's different, because even the bench players are really good, right? And so you're used to being number one. You're used to being number one, right? And when you get to the pros, everyone's number one, and you're a bench player, and you're only playing 5 minutes in garbage time. And so like that can play on your athletic performance, and it can play on your, athletic performance, and it can cause you to go into a depressive state, because one is something you've never experienced before, because you've been the man or the woman this entire time, and you go into a place like, oh, this is not something I'm used to, or just the anxiety to perform. Like it can be even dissociation, like in your mind, like you're forgetting things. I think about Fultz, who plays for Orlando. I think he played for the 76ers first. On, his shot, he had to relearn how to shoot and just so many things. I think that was a mental lapse. That was like a dissociation, he was struggling mentally. I know a lot of people said other things, but I think he was struggling mentally with how fast paced the NBA was. And these are 18 and 19-year-olds playing with grown men. Ron was in his 30s. That's a jump. And so you have to look at how that affects them as far as depression and anxiety, and then that athletic performance. But I think on the other end, I think sports can be a way out. And so it can affect, I guess, more in a positive way. So if I'm struggling with depression, anxiety, but ball is all I have, then, I'm a ball out here and push my issues to the back of my mind and just put it all out there on the court. So I think it can be kind of both ways, just really how the person takes it.
So Ashley, and just using that in particular, is there, in your opinion, a cookie cutter way for athletes to transition from the college to the professional ranks? Because, using Markelle Fultz as you just used, that was, almost a one-off, but I have to believe it happens more often than we think. So, I mean, is there a way that you can see that's not necessarily seamless, but, a smoother way for athletes to transition from the collegiate level to the professional ranks?
I don't think there is a cookie cutter way, because I think everyone is their own individual. And I think everyone needs to have more so an individualized plan. So I think we all work better here. And so if you are a manager, or if you've ever had a manager, you're not going to have the same plan or as your coworker, or if you're a manager, you're not going to have the same plan for one worker as you have for another. You're going to individualize it for everyone. So I don't think it's a cookie cutter plan, but I think putting more emphasis on their mental health, like, so if they do one and done, and I think what Kentucky does one and done, Kansas, Duke, all of them, they do like a lot of one and done players. So yeah, your Power Fives, your Power Fives. So if you have like that one and done, have someone to mentor them about finances, mentor them about love life, or whatever it's going to be like, because there's a lot that happens there. But like, have someone to mentor them, to guide them, maybe their first 5 years. If I would personally like it if they had like mandatory therapy. I know they have sports psychologists and things like that. I don't know if they have like mandatory, like they have to go to therapy sessions and things like that. But that's something that I would personally like for them to be invested in their mental health, because I think we see it's more busts than not, right? Or am I lying? Is it more busts or not?
Mm-hmm. No. And I would say too, would you be looking, if you had your way, to have that happen in the collegiate ranks prior to them jumping to the pros, or once they get to the pros?
I would personally like it more in the collegiate, because if I'm not mistaken, if my statistics are right, I don't know if it's 1 or 2% of collegiate athletes make it to the pros. And so some of them think that they're going to make it. They may go to the draft. They may even get drafted, but they may get cut. They may go to the NBA. They may get waived. They may play in the G League, and they may not make it. Mm-hmm. And so I would like them to have something that's helpful for them outside of athletics too. And so, like, okay, your dream is to play in NBA. Let's make sure you get your degree. Because education can't fail you. Your education cannot fail you. So I would like to have something like that, like as far as financial literacy, mental health, just, success outside of athletics, all those different things. And that's my own little tangent.
Okay. So in terms of pressure from coaches, do you think there should be some mental health training that coaches receive, or should it just be them referring to the professionals? So if I got Johnny and I know something's wrong with him, and he's on he's my starting power forward, and something's going on with him, is it best for me to just push him off to the mental health professionals, or should I have some training to learn how to see the signs and be able to, bridge that gap between him and the professionals?
I definitely think that the coaches, but I also think the school staff should have training. And so look at it like this. I've never done a recruitment thing or whatever, but I've seen the Blind Side. So I remember the recruitment process on the Blind Side, right? And I've also seen Draft Day, which I love that movie with Kevin Costner. So when I'm guessing when these coaches go into these players' homes, they recruit them, everything, right? When they sitting with their mamas, especially Black men who are from single parent homes and they're sitting with their mom, these coaches come in and tell them like, hey, I'm going to take care of your son or your daughter. I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to treat them like family. This is what's going to happen. And when they get on campus, all of that probably goes out the window, out the door. And I think that they need education on their circumstances, each student's circumstances, and their background on how to talk to them. about their mental health. I don't think it is strictly on the mental health support team or the providers. I think it's on the coaches, but also the staff administrators, the teachers. Like, how do we make sure we talk to them, make sure we're, motivating them? Microaggression is big, and microaggressions, micro means little. Microaggression after microaggression after microaggression comes a macroaggression. And so you have to look at that, like these little incidents and things that they, encounter in college, it leads up, it builds up. So I think, make a long story short, yes, I definitely think that coaches, but also coaches, staff, administrators, they need to have like seminars and conferences on how to be able to get the best out of their players within on the field, but outside of the field, because, they're athletes, but most of them are not going to go to the pros, and they need to know how to live outside of that too.
And I think in regards to that too, what I can envision is coaches saying, look, I only got this kid for a year or so. I'm not going to invest all of that, or the school saying, because we know, especially now with NIL, these kids, they're making the money for the school. So I think, it takes, for lack of a better term, it takes a village. So everybody has to buy in to that, and while I agree it's probably something that's needed, Lord knows it would take probably an act of Congress for something like that to happen on a consistent basis, but I think it is that because there's always going to be pressure, from your coaches, to have this athlete perform at the highest ability. So, I think that, it's something that definitely, we should take a look at. And, from a recruiting perspective, I think parents can, affect that change. They can say, hey, listen, you said you're going to take care of my son. And if that's not happening, then I got a problem. I mean, hey, little Johnny about to jump into this transfer portal and, be done with it. But I think we have to stop, let me say that, looking at athletes as commodities, and, once we do that and start looking at them as individuals and human beings, we'll be better off because, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, mental health is more important than physical health. That's just how I see it, because the body does what the mind wants it to do. And it's very important, when we talk about pressures and stuff like that. How can athletes handle the pressures from, let's say, friends and family? Because I have to imagine that is probably the most intense pressure that they have.
That is a hard one because a lot of times, most times I'm not, your family has been there with you through all these hard times, the early practices, the late practices, the good games, the bad games. The family has been in. I understand family, when you get big, family could come out the woodworks. Like, remember when I, gave you a shoestring to tie for your shoe with it? They can come out the, yeah.
That one day I picked you up.
When I waved at you at your game and you get that 3 right after. So, it can be hard. Right.
Let me get 50,000.
It can be hard. And so when I talk about like financial literacy, I think that's a part of it too. Like, your money. And as far as like, okay, who am I giving money to? Who am I not? Like, am I giving all this money? Because I don't know if they think that, and this is professional sense anyway, I don't know if they think that the money's going to continue to flow, or whatnot. But having a financial literacy, I also think you have to be able to set boundaries. And as a therapist, I know what I see, and this is from a professional sense, but also from a personal standpoint. I know setting boundaries with family is the hardest thing to do. Setting that boundary, establishing that boundary or those boundaries and maintaining, that is very hard because when you set a boundary, you're basically saying, hey, the way things have been going, it's been benefiting you, but not benefiting me. And this is the way to protect myself. And everybody doesn't take well to boundaries. So I do think like being able to set that boundary with yourself and being able to set that boundary with your family, like, hey, this is what it's going to be. And maybe even trying to set that boundary early. Because again, if you're the man or the woman, you have all this money, and it's not always about just money and things like that. But that's just one of the biggest things that comes to my mind. Why you see the stories. he played football. He gave all his money. He played. There's a lot of football players, but I can't think. He played for Alabama. He was a running back, I think. He gave all his money away to his family, and now he's like, I can't think of his name, but I remember his story. And he was just, letting his cousins run his Netflix account and things like that. So you have to look at that, those boundaries.
So, I mean, because I have to imagine that's got to be hard,
Mhm.
for setting boundaries with your mom.
Mhm.
I mean, she birthed you. So,
Mhm.
I mean,
How can you tell her no?
And then with the intense pressure, I have to imagine mentally that's going to mess with you,
Mm-hmm.
because the minute you say no, then you got to hear it from everybody.
Yeah.
And, like to your point, Ashley, remember when I took you to practice? And my thing about all of that, though, is you wasn't in the gym. You didn't dribble this ball. You wasn't running them drills on the football field. But here it is. You feel like you're entitled to share in my financial success. So again, I mean, it's hard. So how can you even start to go down that line about setting boundaries? Because I have to imagine it's easier for some athletes than it is for others.
I think
definitely.
so. I like to call soft boundaries first. I always encourage my class, don't go in here. Okay, no, to everybody. And I also like to say you can set silent boundaries. So soft and silent boundaries. When we hear boundaries, I don't know if people think you go to them and tell them hey, I'm no more. No. It's just little small things. I'm just being honest. It's little small things that you do. And so when I look at support, so for instance, monetary, I always say, does it have to be monetary? Does it have to be money, or can I help you and show you how to get this on your own? Let me give you the resources that you need. So not saying to not support them anymore. No. Not saying you can't support your family or friends or whatnot, but let me give you the resources. So I know this guy who could be helpful in helping you invest in those things and such, but it doesn't always have to be monetary. And I think looking at that, how can I still support you, but it doesn't have to be monetary and those types of things, or just stuff Ma, we about to, I got to start cutting down how much money I'm giving you right now because, I got a lot of stuff kind of going on. So, but, let's sit together, kind of look at a budget, things like that. Some people may not want to do that, and that's completely fine. But I think that there are different little ways that you can kind of work around it without just saying a definite no. However, there are times where you do have to say that no, and that's where I always say, making sure you have your support system behind you. So, if you are seeing a therapist, that's probably the time where you need to talk with your therapist and be able to work through that. I had to actually tell my mom no, and I had to deal with those feelings of guilt and shame or whatever it is that you're feeling, because you had to really tell your mom no, that you can't continue, or your brother, I can't continue to give you this money,
Okay. I think that, when it comes to that, again, it's going to be on an individual basis and people going to have issues with it,
I agree.
One of the things I just recently saw a story, I forget the gentleman's name, played for the Baltimore Ravens. And he had so much support. His dad, for whatever reason, had access to his accounts. And they were on a road trip somewhere, and the player spent $50 on a pizza or something like that. And his father called him out in black. Hey man, what's up with that $50? Where'd that go? He said he had bought a pizza for what's his name, Matthew Judon, because he didn't have his credit card or something like that. And his dad got on him, and he said he had to actually explain. Now, to me, I don't know about that, but that's a little
overkill. But
yeah, that's overkill. Because Dad, I love you, but hold on now. But I could appreciate, the support that his father was saying, okay, what's going on in terms of, financial literacy or whatever. So I think that there is such thing as too much support, but then there's such thing as no support.
Too little.
And to this day, Allen Iverson will tell y'all he blew through that $200 million that he made.
But I think, like you said, what we were saying, it goes back to that family support, because if you look at, let's say, for example, Grant Hill's draft class. Grant Hill came from a family who had money.
Mm-hmm.
There's several members of his draft class that came from families that didn't have money. Grant Hill is doing very, very well. If you look at some of those other players, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
So again, when you have a family that's, we were here for you when, and now there's an expectation, or even, you'll hear kids, from high school, college, always say, when I make it, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that.
Never.
And then when they actually do make it, then that pressure is there to, like, oh, well, I said I have to do it. Now I have to do it. I guess one of my questions would be, wouldn't it be in a team's best interest to do those type of programs, like you're saying, like the financial literacy and such? Because if I'm on let's say a 3 or 5 year contract and I'm broke within my first couple of years, that's going to affect my mental health and it's going to affect my play. So to me, it would behoove professional franchises to say, hey, let's really get involved. Not necessarily that you spend $50 on a pizza, but still, like, you need to watch what you're doing, with boundaries, with family access to your, personal everyday life type of thing when you're supposed to be training and dedicated to your craft.
Yeah, and so no, I definitely agree with you. And to my understanding, I think they do the NBA, if I'm not mistaken, because I feel like LeBron and there's some other stars like Chris Paul have talked about it. Like, they have financial literacy and financial classes and things like that. That I think that they make them mandatory going. Now it's up to them to actually take it serious. But I want us to go back to something you said about Grant Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Grant Hill was one of my favorite players. Actually, I loved him with the feelings and the Sprite. But clearly I have like an old soul. But I just loved him. But with Grant Hill, so what, Grant Hill went to Duke, right? And am I correct? Went to Duke. And so to my understanding,
Yes.
Duke is kind of like with the blue collar or white collar and things like that. But especially back then, like, you had, and
White
so
collar, for sure.
As an example, the Fab Five, we know where they came from, Detroit. Well, one of them came from Detroit anyway. So basically,
Hey, hold on now. Hold on. We okay.
Oh, okay.
Chris was from Detroit.
Chris was from Detroit too.
Tennessee Web too.
Huh?
So yeah, too.
But so, like, looking at that, and so if I'm using that example, looking at Grant Hill and the Fab Five, looking at where the Fab Five came from, and looking at Grant Hill's family, and so we're talking about financial literacy, and so Grant Hill's family were kind of well off. They were doing well, a well off Black family, and so you have to look at that as far as his family probably taught him about financial literacy. His family weren't dependent on him to make something to be like, hey, you're going to be the breadwinner. You're going to get this for us. You're going to help us. If you make it, we make it. His family was accomplished. They didn't need that from him. They just wanted him to be the best player. But if we look at if we look at the Fab Five, a lot of them, the environment they came from, like, hey, you make it, we make it. And I think a lot of times they feel entitled, like, hey, because you did help me, I have to make sure that I got you, no matter what. My friend, my uncle, everybody, the whole family, is I make it, we make it. And I think that's where the financial literacy fails in that point, because they probably weren't educated on financial literacy. And you also, going back to what you said, Eugene, about the pressure, they probably feel that pressure to take care of everyone. And I think that plays into mental health too, because I remember when you were this way. I remember when you didn't have anything. Now you changed. And I think it's also the thing of making sure you stay, you stay fluid. Like, well, you got your money. Now you think you all that, or you change and those things. And so I think a lot of times they want to make sure they're loyal. And I think that's a big part too, the loyalty to their friends and their family and things of that nature.
Now, in your field, do you see that there is a distinct difference when it comes to race, the Black athletes versus the white athletes? I mean, because I have to imagine there are probably some issues like that on the white athlete side. But, is there a big gap in between the white athletes and the Black athletes when we talk about, these issues that, we brought up?
Well, living in Texas is a huge sports state. And so football is huge. And, I think you have like maybe the Frisco and the Allen area versus like Duncanville, and all those other like Duncanville, Lancaster, those places. And so Duncanville and Lancaster have great athletes, right? And Frisco and Allen have great athletes. But I think you see the difference. You see the difference in the facilities. You just see, of course, the way like a lot of Black athletes who are in like the Frisco and the Allen area, they're in kind of well-off areas versus the athletes who are in the other areas are not from well-off areas, but they're still great athletes. And so I do see that. And so with that, I see the different problems that they encounter versus outside of athletics, what they're struggling with in their everyday life. I see the vast difference in the two.
What would be some of those struggles?
Financial things. I'm not gonna always say like food and stuff, but financial, like, how do we get money for this, or struggling with this, or, what is college going to look like? Just, it can be pressure. It can be pressure versus if I'm talking about the other side, that's not as much pressure. And I'm not gonna say it's not any pressure, but it's not as much. But I do see like the financial part and like the pressure to make it, to make it. Like I gotta, go to this school and make something of myself versus I don't see as much pressure to make it. Maybe pressure from parents to be better than them, or you have to go to this school and then be a great athlete, but not pressure financially or just having that on your shoulders, like to be the one in your family to make it.
And one of the things that I have seen in being here in Michigan, we don't see it that much, but we have some athletes probably over the last few years that they start younger and younger. We've had U of M offering scholarships to kids in middle school. So, my question would be, being from a big sport state like Texas, do you see the pressure on these athletes at younger and younger ages? I mean, because like I said, here in Michigan, we've had a couple where they were in middle school. I have to imagine, how are you going to put pressure on a middle school student like that? Because I'm sure the parents are like, oh, I hit a lick.
Mm-hmm. Yep, AAU prodigies.
Yeah, exactly. So do you see that more happening in Texas?
Yes. My two sons have just played youth soccer, and just going to their games, I've seen how intense the parents are about sports and performing, and they got to do it this way. And like, again, football is really big here. So even just with the flag football teams, this is just summer or spring youth sports, and they're very, very serious. And it's just I can see it already. And the little 3-year-olds, like, they have their footballs already and they're running and they're juking and all these different things. I'm like, my son doesn't do all that. Let me also juking. So I see the intensity. It's really big here.
So that pressure then is passed on to the kids. The pressure that their parents are, we call them helicopter parents and stuff like that, and it's, in my opinion, it's just a situation where parents are living vicariously through their kids, but not realizing the type of pressure that they're putting on them. Because I know a lot of times, parents think their kids are better than they actually are.
Oh, for sure.
And, it takes the coaches to be like, no, little Johnny ain't got it.
Yeah, or a blowout game, and then you see it.
Well, I've been to high school games where the parents will root for their individual child rather than the team. So the team might be losing, but if their child is performing well or not performing well, they're saying, get it together, good shot, move over here. And it's like, you're getting blown out by 20. You're not even rooting for the team. You're rooting for that child. So I'm always looking at that like you said, Eugene, you're putting a lot of pressure on that kid, because when you're playing a team sport, football, basketball, soccer, whatever it may be, you win and lose as a team.
Yeah, but you got mom telling you blew it, or dad saying you need to do better because your team lost.
But think about the pressure too or the relationship issues that it causes between that kid and their teammates.
Exactly.
You know, because your mama out there rooting you on, we getting blown out by 20, so we looking at you like, okay, you probably believe the stuff that your mama is saying. So what's going on with that?
Because you're going to go in the locker room and say, what's wrong with y'all?
Yep.
And then
My mom said.
they're gonna
Mom
give you
said I was killing it.
Yep, they're gonna give you a blanket party. So
I mean, I've
Oh, boy.
to
Brandon,
go
you
back
got-
to what you, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go
Ashley.
ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, just going back, I've seen the parents do that root for their children, but I've also seen the parents talk badly about their teammates if they make a bad pass or if they do something. Like I've seen it. Like I've been to playoff games here in Texas, and it's huge. It's really really big, and I've just seen kind of how everything is and how the parents interact and how they talk about the games. And in my mind, you know, being a human being, I'm just like, why are you talking about children like this? They're kids. But I've seen that too.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see stuff like that, do you just automatically go into therapist mode, thinking about how this is affecting their child or the kids
Yes,
mentally?
exactly. I think about all of that.
So it's hard for you to enjoy the game as a fan then, if you
Yeah, and
thinking like
I
that.
go into therapist mode, but I also go into like with my own children. Like if my children decide to play, making sure like I am never going to be like that. I'm even with my son Cameron playing soccer, just making sure I'm rooting for everybody. Like that's because I know how important that is to their development, because they remember those things. They remember if someone was shouting at them, telling them they weren't good enough, they weren't doing enough, versus someone saying, hey, good try. Let's get it the next time. You're doing a good job. You know, hey, it's okay. We lose. It's okay. You know, disappointment is a feeling that you're going to feel, you know, like being honest with them, but also like prepping them up. I just want to make sure I do that. And I just wish more people did that. But I guess it's alarming to have actually seen that. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to continue to see it.
Okay. I just thought of something too, Ashley. Years ago, they started this whole thing with participation trophies and medals and ribbons and stuff.
Uh-oh.
What's your take on that? Because as an OG,
Mhm.
I despise that, because what it does to me is it creates parity. And at the end of the day, in life, there are winners and losers. Everybody is not on the same page. So, I mean, what is your take on that from a mental health professional standpoint?
It's difficult for me on that one, because I'm sure, because like I said, I was an athlete my whole life. I played soccer in college, so I'm trying to remember. I don't think we got participation trophies. Maybe we did. I don't know. I don't think it was the same way it is today. It's I don't know. It's difficult, because I do think that you should be given something for your effort, but I do also feel like everyone should be able to feel, I said it earlier, disappointment. Disappointment is something we're going to feel in life regardless. And so if you didn't win first place, you know, understanding what that means, you know, I didn't win the race, or I didn't win the game, or whatever it may be, or my team didn't win, and understanding what disappointment feels like, because disappointment is going to be something you feel in life. And I don't think we should necessarily guard them from that, because, you know, life isn't easy and life isn't pretty, and it's not happy, happy, joy, joy all the time. I don't want to set them up for failure. So I'm not saying like they should experience disappointment all the time, but disappointment is a feeling, just like feeling happy is a feeling. It's just an uncomfortable feeling. And I think if you understand like, hey, I didn't win this, disappointment is okay for me to feel. How do I get through this feeling? Kind of. So I don't know if I answered your question. It's just kind of different for me.
No, I mean, because I'm from old school, so my thing is just work harder. You didn't win. So,
I mean, you kind of spoke to it earlier when you said somebody's going to be on the end of the bench.
Yeah, gotta
I
be.
mean, even as a little kid, if you're on the team and you don't perform that well, or you're not the best, you know, athlete on the team, you're still on the team, and you just happen to be at the end of the bench. So that kid is probably not going to make it to You know, depending on unless you get like a Michael Jordan story, he got cut from JV and now he's the greatest ever.
One in a million.
All that kind of garbage. But anyway, I think it's propaganda. But that's a whole other topic. But you know, he or she is gonna be disappointed, you know, in their performance. But like you said, Gene, get better.
Yeah,
Or
failure's a great teacher.
This is where I am. This may not be my path, and that's cool. But I got some camaraderie. I still know some people. You know, even the guy on the end of the bench of a college or a pro team that win a championship, they still get a championship ring.
The greatest story is Rob Pelinka.
That's it.
So,
I mean, and he's gone on and he's made a quite nice living for himself.
yes.
Yeah, no
So,
complaints.
you know, and that disappointment may be that, you know, this is not my path in life to be a super duper athlete.
So, Brenda, let me ask you, when you were coming up, were you a part of that participation trophy era?
No, I was not. So I was probably right before it started. So my thing was like that doesn't make sense. And because I guess we were seeing the experimental of it, it was kind of funny, you know, because you had the first parents seeing that, and the parents are livid saying, why does he get a trophy? My kid, I took my kid here every day. So I'm seeing the first iterations of this. So it was coming around, you know, I did other stuff when I was little when you could go buy yourself a medal for something. So there were the people that earned it, or you could go and buy yourself a medal for stuff like that. And I think now you're in that participation trophy area where it was foreign to us, you know. You had first place, second place, third place. That's what I grew up with. Not, you know, I saw it in movies, of course, when, you know, he participated in the spelling bee and he was the first one eliminated, but he got a trophy for that. And
You ain't even getting a certificate. Get out of here.
got the little printout.
Sit down.
But I got one for you, Ashley. I know we're on mental health, right? And I think sometimes that goes hand in hand with the physical health, right?
Well,
So my question to you is, a big thing that you see on the news nowadays is athletes and performance enhancing drugs. You look in the boxing world, you got the Haney Garcia situation going on. From your aspect, do you see an impact, or is there an influence with the mental health of someone in the resolution of going to performance enhancing drugs? Or is it something, because essentially you're butting up against a doctor, essentially, because they have to get this from a medical professional. In most cases, I know there's the alleyway stories, but I'm just talking from, you know, a doctor, potential doctor, future doctor of mental health going up against a physical doctor saying, here are performance enhancing drugs. What is your take point on that?
Well, I mean, to my understanding, you're taking enhancement drugs to enhance your performance. So if it's because you had an injury, you want the injury to heal up quicker or nicer or whatever. I think Ryan Garcia, if you want to be bigger or you want to land your punches faster, I don't know if that's actually it, but I'm just, you know, something, but you know,
Gotcha.
I think all of this comes from pressure. So if you played in the NBA or football, and because it's literally next man up, that's what I think of. And what I mean by that is like, if you tear your ACL, tear your Achilles, horrible. Back in the day, if you tore your Achilles or your ACL, you were done for. Like in the 80s and 90s, like your career was done. And so now, of course, with everything going on, you can come back, but it's a possibility you may not be the same. And so guess what? Another player's up. I just said it earlier. Everyone in the NBA is good. Even if they're on the bench, they're good. And so I think it can be pressure to continue to maintain that level of that peak performance that you had before your injury per se. And I necessarily may not all be with injury. It could just be like, I want to be the best, because again, it's still next man up. And so I think personally, this comes from the pressure component. Yeah, and so you have people in your ear. This is media. This could be your family, media, coaches, fans, everyone. That plays with your mental health. That definitely plays with your mental health. Like, I have to continue to be the best. Or I have to continue to be this. But if you want to go into social media, that's a whole different world and a whole different topic. But Like all of that plays
Yeah.
with you mentally, and it affects you. And so I do think with that, mental health can play a big part in individuals who do that, because typically you get caught. And when you get caught, there are some consequences to that.
Oh yeah, yeah,
That is true. And we see it all the time. So, you know.
yeah. Newsflash.
Exactly. Well, I just want to say, as always, you know, we've had very good conversation here. Ashley, we thank you for joining us, and we look forward, you know, anytime you want to come back, which hopefully we can make you come back, because again, we're going to start putting that doctor tag on you.
Right.
We thank you for your expertise. And everybody, just until next time, just want to say, stay prayerful, stay positive, stay patient, stay peaceful. See you next time.
Thank you for having me.